Hi, everyone. This is Allie Harris from Apex Benefits. I am a population health specialist, and I'm super glad to be back with you again today. Brooke and I are back together. I think we brought in this series, and now today we're going to kind of wrap it up and talk about how we're going to be moving forward in 2021. So it's good to see you, Brooke.
It's good to be seen, Allie. It's so nice to chat with you. I'm Brooke Salazar, and I am an HR consultant and in-house counsel for Apex Benefits. And I am super excited to revisit this Light Your Fire content because there's so much good stuff in it.
Yes. So today we're going to kind of be doing a recap on some of the episodes that we've done previously. So today's discussion's not all encompassing. We both really encourage everyone to go back and rewatch or pick up some of those episodes that we're kind of talking about. And I think that would be super helpful. But today's just kind of like a highlight overview. There were some topics that really, really hit home with me and I really enjoyed listening and learning about. So we thought we could maybe revisit, but then also dive a little bit deeper.
No, I'm really excited as well, Allie, because I know I could talk about this for hours, but frankly, no one wants to hear that. So let's dig into it.
Yeah, let's start. We're going to start with felt security, which was one of the topics that came up when I talked with Sarah Michaels last week, and I thought it was phenomenal. It was the first time that I heard it, and it was just something that really stuck with me.
Oh, I absolutely loved it. And then I read about it even more. And then the takeaway that you guys produced on communication guidelines and the felt security, how to make your workforce feel that was tremendous. And so I loved every second of it. It's about making someone feel secure.
Yeah.
And what actions do we do to help them feel secure? Because we all know that once they feel secure, performance, productivity, et cetera, will improve. Mm-hmm. Retention, all of those things. And Sarah's tips on how to make your workforce feel secure blew me away.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think really kind of stuck with me was the idea of being safe and knowing that you're safe are two very different things. So we can provide a physical, safe environment where we're not going to be in danger from, physical harm or all of these safety things that we put, in place in all sorts of different kinds of businesses. But the idea of employees knowing that they're safe and that internal feeling that they have produces a much different impact and result on the work that they do when they feel that sense of security more like an internal feeling.
I completely agree. And I loved her tips on being transparent, mm-hmm. leading with intention. If you're not sure of what's going on, it's okay to say at this time, this is a decision we've made based on the information we have today. It could shift with the more information we learn.
Yeah.
And so those practical tips and communication, I think they could work for so many things. They can work for crisis communication. Mm-hmm. They can work for open enrollment. They can work for debuting a new plan, like a wellness plan or a new policy. And I just felt that it was a very versatile takeaway that was produced because her tips were so absolutely practical and free.
Yes, I know. And it's that whole sense of that predictability and creating predictability. And how many times do we, when we don't know all the answers, we tend to fill in the gaps with our own. So we're kind of working in our own brain and filling in gaps and putting in pieces that might not be accurate. So, going back to that episode, I think there's so many just practical tips, just like you said, that can be implemented free of charge, doesn't cost you anything, but it's just some ideas to kind of move forward. And I know that kind of goes into like what you had talked about with resiliency in the workforce and kind of what you're doing with that.
Right. So we had a great conversation with Paula Davis-Lack. Mm-hmm. And if you watch the conversation, you'll see me completely moon over her because I've been following her forever. I think the kids call it standing.
You are a fan.
Standing,
mm-hmm.
stalking / fandom. But I loved what she talked about is building resilience through using your middle managers, right? Because those are the folks that touch our employees on a day-to-day basis. So teaching them how to build resilience within their teams. And what does that look like? So again, that looks like we're hearing a lot of the same themes, but that looks like appropriate messaging. That looks like positive reinforcement and those small things. That an email with nothing else attached to it, just, I really like that report, you did a great job, or even a message home, or just stopping and saying, I really appreciate what you did, especially as a manager. Do you want, how can I make you feel more valued?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the key piece with that is sometimes we don't know what to say and we don't know how to initiate that conversation. So, we've talked a little bit about it, but I think it's really important to highlight some of the terms and words and language that we can use to kind of open those conversations. And I really like that we've talked about, how can I help you today? Like, what is there that I can do? And kind of leading with those open-ended questions. So like, how can I help you? What is going on? Instead of being like, do you need this? Do you need that? Where you're answering yes or no and kind of coming at them a little bit stronger, but just kind of knowing that you're there. I think opening that door is very important for those kind of conversations.
Oh, absolutely. And just asking, how are you?
How are you?
How can I make your day easier?
Mm-hmm.
And you will be so surprised by the answers that you hear. I have all kinds of stories. One of my favorite stories is I was an HR manager and I had an IT help guy, and he was wonderful. I knew he had 2 young kids, and I saw him in the hall, and he just didn't have that same energy. Like, he just looked kind of down. And I said, hey, how are you? And he said, well, my back hurts. And I said, I hate to hear that. Is there anything I could do to help? Anything I can help you with? And he was like, yeah, I have 2 slip discs in my back. Do you think I could get a better chair? Well, I mean, number one, from a lawyer's perspective, like, we did just hear a request for accommodation.
Right.
And so, of course, you engage in the interactive process. But I brought in an ergonomic specialist that was $150. She spent 3 hours with him. No additional cost past that. She was like, go to Costco, get a standing pad, and put this thing on the chair that we already had. And I saw him later in the week. He had told me what a great experience it was. And I said, hey, you look happy. Everything must have gone great. And he was like, I feel so much better. I did not realize I had stopped playing with my 2 girls after work because my back hurt so bad. But now I've started playing with them again, and now we're going on walks after work.
All from a simple question passing in the hall.
All from, I was out of coffee, and I was going to get coffee, and I said, hey, what's going on? How are you? Is there anything I can do to help? And it changed his life. I mean,
right.
And I would never have known.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All of those, just taking the initiative to have a conversation. It was easier to do when we were in the hallway or we were in person, and being able to pass through and just kind of, just like you said, recognize on his face or his demeanor that he was not as perky as he maybe was. But that brings up another really interesting topic of being so virtual and communicating in different ways now, with being, having emails going back and forth and just trying to interpret or sometimes misinterpreting emails and tones that are coming through. How long do we let that fester inside of us and maybe make us bitter or uncomfortable? And when do we have those conversations with people to say, maybe I'm feeling like this was a little bit rude, or, I'm not really sure what they meant by that, but, at what point do I bring it up or do I let it go? And, So it kind of takes on that new shift too. Like we can see each other's faces in the hallway, but I think there's another aspect this year that we've had to take on is really kind of learning to work with people in a different way.
I really like that you brought that up because your and Sarah's conversation about masks really, really hit home with me for such a number of reasons. Namely because my humor is very wry. And so even when I'm not wearing masks pre-COVID, people would say, "Are you kidding?" And so I developed, a way to indicate, which is big facial expressions when I make a joke. And if they don't laugh, it's clearly because it's not funny and they must not have gotten it. And so I found myself communicating behind the mask, and I had to start to redesign how I communicate with people.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really, it was kind of challenging. And then I also found that I was in a hurry one day, and as opposed to like seeing this colleague down the hallway where I could just drop in and say, "Hey, this is what's going on. Thanks for your note." I fired an email back, explaining what was happening, but I was running late. And so there was no, "Hey, how are you? How is this?"
Mm-hmm.
And I read it later, and it felt kind of sharp.
Really?
It did. And so I called her and I said, "Hey, I was just running late and I didn't put it like, have a great day, or, how are you? Or I've missed talking to you. And if it felt sharp or salty to you, I apologize. I was just trying to communicate as fast as I could.
Yeah.
Thanks for your patience with me." And she was like, "I was wondering." Oh, no.
And it's one of those, how often do we go back and read our own emails? We type it up, we send it off, and it's not that second thought, but it must have been something in you that kind of caught to say, maybe let me go back and take a look at that. Or, I've received emails where I've also been like, oh, I don't want to have the initial reaction of defensiveness and kind of feeling like angry. So, maybe giving someone the benefit of the doubt, or even sending an email back, or picking up the phone, just like you said, and calling and being like, "So I took that email as this. Is this how you meant it?" And maybe sometimes it is yes, and they're a little bit agitated or sharp, but most of the time it's probably going to be like, "No, I didn't mean," or maybe they were kind of trying to be that way. But when you have the open conversation to say, "I noticed that your email came across in this kind of way," even you can be honest and say either, "Is this how you meant it?" If it is, maybe we need to have another conversation about how we communicate, so I don't feel, when I read your email, I'm not upset or angry, or, we need to be able to communicate better, more efficiently and more productively.
Oh, absolutely. And especially since we're not seeing each other in person.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me, I always try to think of it as, I don't want to turn it into like the Twitterverse, which can be kind of angry. I'm like, let's keep it on the Instagram level. And so I've always said for years, and I say this to myself, is don't read emails with tone.
Mm-hmm.
So don't project your own tone on them. However, if you're feeling frustrated, absolutely call that person and say, "Is this what I'm feeling this way? Is that how you meant for me to read this?"
Yeah. Yeah. And we've talked about language, like that is at its core. I feel blank because blank. You're not putting the blame on the other person. You're not pointing your fingers and making them feel defensive. You're saying, "I feel this emotion because," and state the facts, and then that opens up the conversation for a more healthy and productive, and then that can open the door for them to feel more comfortable to share with you as well. But I like that. Those are kind of the tips that we've talked about too, of just that language and knowing what to say, when to say, how to say it, and kind of talking openly.
Well, I think that leads to our next one that we did with Olivia Ash, which I really enjoyed, was communicating with empathy.
Yes.
And so teaching managers and using language ourselves that acknowledges how the other person's feeling, because you can acknowledge how the other person is feeling without agreeing to like a 3-day work week, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I think, especially from a legal point of view, that we're so worried about any kind of apology or acknowledgement because we're going to be trapped in a situation we don't want to be trapped in, but we can always acknowledge how somebody feels.
What I heard you say, one of those is a great one. What I heard you say is this: you're not saying whether you agree or disagree, but it makes that person feel heard. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so many times employees just want to feel heard.
Mm-hmm.
And so repeating back to them, thanking them for information that they may not want to hear. So when we talk about empathy and we talk about things like mirroring back, right? So we're going to teach our managers mirror back, acknowledge feelings. And even when they hear bad news, say, thank you. Thank you for telling me that. I understand that must not have been easy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's any bad news, right? Or news that they think you don't want to hear.
Right.
And when we start to build this culture of empathy, we're going to see innovation increase. We're going to see transparency increase because it's taking out the fear of the bad news and the consequence, right? Mm-hmm. So when I think about when I have to tell my mama something that I know she's not going to want to hear, I put it off, frankly, for as long as I can. And she'll say every time, why didn't you tell me sooner? And I'll say, well, I knew you were going to be frustrated or upset. And yes, I'm a grown person, but this is what I do with my mother. And so we really want to take that out in the workplace, and we want to really foster a culture of empathy, because that is communicating to those employees, you're being seen, you're being heard, and you're being valued.
Yes. And I think all of those things are so incredibly important. And it kind of reminds me then to like bringing it all together. Like we've had all of these really good discussions, and we've practiced some of these skills. Like we know what it takes, and we know the things that we need to do on a daily basis. So we've kind of been building our toolkit, and how do we move forward into 2021? Like is it just all going to fall into place and everything's going to be great once it's the new year? Or are there things that we kind of have to take with us and learn from and expand on and continue to do, even though we might be looking for some, light at the end of the tunnel for everything to just be normal again? I think that's kind of where this conversation goes today is how do we move forward?
I think that's a great point, because it's practicing those habits.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime we want to change an outcome, we have to change our habits, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so being able, I'm not going to get into the neurology of habits because I find it fascinating. But when we start to use these tools and it becomes a habit, your managers start to use these tools and it starts to become a habit. What we're building resilience in our organization. We are creating a culture of empathy, which will allow for innovation.
Yeah.
And so to be able to put these tools in our toolkit and use them for whatever is coming next, whether it's 2021 or a challenge in 2025, we're building that resilience within the organization.
Yeah. And I think when I think of, using skills and an end goal, it makes me think of, I've always been an athletic person. I've played golf, I played basketball, and my son plays basketball right now. And, I think like the goal, we all have different end goals or what we want to do in 2021 or what we want for our organizations. And we don't practice the goal. Like the goal in basketball is to have more points than the other team. And when he goes to practice, the whole team just doesn't practice like literally standing by the basket and dropping it in. Like that's going to win the game. But what they focus on is dribbling themselves, passing to each other, learning when to make a good pass, learning to communicate with each other and, call for the ball or dribble or play defense so that you're kind of watching what everybody else is doing. And that's where I'm really seeing him and his team succeed and they're growing. And that's kind of the analogy of like, we have to practice the small things on a daily basis where it's not the fun stuff. It's not playing 5-on-5 and winning a game. It's kind of those nitty gritty things that you just have to kind of continue to do and make the forefront to make sure I'm practicing those good habits. And then the goal is to, win or reach your goal in 2021. And if we don't, or if we get off course, we go back and kind of reset and we keep working and practicing those type of things. So of all the topics that we've kind of talked about and what you have learned or anyone has learned on a personal level in this last year, we've learned it for a reason and it's here for a reason. And now we get to use it to better ourselves and better our organization so that we don't go back to normal. We go back to a better normal or an advanced level where we've taken what we've learned, we've regrouped and got some skills, extra skills in our pockets, and now we're more equipped to move forward.
I couldn't agree more, because I would love to practice just making the sale.
Yeah.
Or just selling the product or just selling the widget or, whatever that looks like just signing that document.
Just that. Yeah.
Right? That to me sounds like a great day, but it's those habits that we carry forward.
Mm-hmm.
And if you allow this to build up empathy and build up resilience in your organization, it'll be all the stronger for it.
Yes. I couldn't agree more.
Well, I obviously love talking to you. And I'm really excited to see what's going to come in 2021. And again, I would encourage everyone to go back and listen to those episodes and those takeaways, because they're great. And if you're looking for a takeaway, feel free to email us or reach out to us at the Apex website. That's Apex, B as in benefits, G as in group, .com. So that's apexbg.com, and we'd be happy to chat with you more.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.